Okay, welcome everybody to the final episode in Brit and Rupert's history of video games. It's a big moment. It's a special moment. But we got to bring you up to date because otherwise we could go on forever about this. So in the previous episode we covered kind of the late 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah.
Sort of the PlayStation 2, Dreamcast, etc. Nintendo GameCube, and I suppose Dreamcast is where, weirdly, thinking about beginning here, because Dreamcast was.
Is this an online thing?
Yes, correct. It was able to connect to the internet, but then it never really caught on because back then internet was kind of a luxury.
Well, yeah, internet was sort of in its infancy.
Yeah.
So when the speeds. Is it like 14.4K modems?
Yeah.
I guess what's like 40 megabytes a second?
Yeah, they were slow, so it wasn't really. It was kind of a luxury item, really, wasn't it? PC, as in the personal computer, has always been pushing things in terms of like technology and that. So then in like 2005, you had World of Warcraft, for instance. So Britt, tell me about World of Warcraft. What is World of Warcraft?
It's time consuming. I've never actually played it, or I've never even actually seen a screenshot of it.
Oh really?
So I know it's like an online RPG involving thousands of people.
That's basically it, yeah. So it's a role-playing game. So you play a character and you build them up. You build up their skills. You kind of collect weapons and armor, that sort of thing.
I think, a little aside, but the reason I don't like online games, especially stuff like World of Warcraft, is because there's no end to it. There's no structured narrative. You're just grinding, like we talked about a few episodes ago about like the roguelike games.
Yeah.
We are just grinding and getting new weapons, new armor.
Yeah.
And that doesn't appeal to me.
And it doesn't really. There's no end game in sight.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's a perfect business model when you think about it, because there is no end game.
Yeah.
It can just keep expanding, and it has done. I mean, it's still around 10 years later. It's still going, and you know it still has around 10 million subscribers, so it's a huge deal. And when I say subscribers, they pay, basically everyone pays a subscription fee per month of like £8 or something, and basically it means that they all join in together and you're having an adventure together with thousands of other people online and fighting each other online, that sort of thing. And it's like a big grand adventure, except you're playing alongside other players from around the world. And yeah, like Britt says, there's no end game. It just keeps expanding and expanding, so you don't complete the game as such. And that's kind of influenced a lot of games now. So now you have a lot of kind of massively multiplayer worlds. So something like Destiny you might have heard of. So yeah, that was kind of pushing the online thing. But then also at that time, in the sort of mid 2000s, you had the 7th generation of consoles coming to the fore, dominated by the PlayStation 3 and the Xbox 360. So you had Sony PlayStation 3 and the Microsoft Xbox 360, and they really brought along the kind of, I guess their defining feature was the cinematic experience, would you say?
Yeah, it was also when there was a few things that happened with that generation. One, which for anyone listening to this who's ever collected any kind of consoles, wireless controllers, which is a beautiful plus because the less cables the better.
Yeah.
Digital gaming, they started. You could download. I don't think with any other console you could as a precursor, you couldn't download games online.
No.
Which is odd in itself because they still maintain premium physical prices.
Yeah.
And yet there's they don't have to take them to stores or whatever to stock them.
I'm just going to list some kind of key games from this particular era, that kind of 2005 onwards era. You got Call of Duty Modern Warfare, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare it was called, which was, you explain what that was.
It was with Modern Warfare is a really good example of this sort of it exploded in the same way that usually games like FIFA explode, where it's just a huge mass market for it. It's a first-person military shooter again, but it was really geared towards online play, and that sort of business model. And I think you've played through. I've never played through a Modern Warfare game, but I think the campaign is like a few hours thrown together.
Yes.
And you pass it, and it's like, right, you've done that. Now get online with everyone else.
Yes.
It's almost a tutorial to the online.
Pretty much. That's definitely what it's become, because there's been so many iterations since Call of Duty Modern Warfare. I mean, there were 3 Call of Duty games before that, and then basically there's been loads of iterations of I think there's been 3 Modern Warfare games, and then you've got the Black Ops games, Call of Duty Black Ops, and then you've got Call of Duty Ghosts, you've got Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. I
Yeah.
mean, they come out every year basically, so you've got about 10 of them by now. It's very macho, very jingoistic, kind of very pro-American, anti anyone else.
The reason I don't, apart from the online aspect, which I don't really, it's not really my thing. I suppose growing up in an era, being 31 now, where you grow up and you're used to having friends around, whether it's sort of deathmatch or co-op.
Yeah.
Have we actually explained what that is?
I'll explain what deathmatch is. So deathmatch is where basically you're up against other players, either with on the same machine using a kind of split screen, or online, so playing around people against around the world, and you're just basically going around trying to kill each other or take each other down. So it's deathmatch. So you're all against all.
It was popularized by, we've mentioned it before, Quake on the PC, I think.
Yeah.
Doom and Quake. And co-op is just cooperative gameplay where, that usually you and two or three other people will, one or three other people will sort of work through the campaign of the game, working together as opposed to just on a sort of set map trying to kill each other.
I guess some other games that are kind of key from that period would be the Uncharted series and the Last of Us, both on PlayStation 3.
I was going to say the PlayStation 3 exclusives.
And also Halo 3. The reason I'm kind of mentioning all them is because off the back of Modern Warfare, there was a real move towards this cinematic experience of gaming, where often it's about like trying to.
That started with a game on the PlayStation 2 called, I think in America it's called Indigo Prophecy, but in Europe it was called Fahrenheit.
Oh yeah.
And that was the first time I played a game that made, apart from the sort of FMV sort of style, where it was all about, it's a sort of a narrative and it's minimalist sort of actual gameplay to it, and they're called, it's popularized now, they're called quick time events, where you'll be watching a cutscene or a scene happen in front of you as if you're watching a film, and then it'll say press X and you have to press that button, or otherwise you fail, and then you redo it.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I mean, there was a game again on PlayStation 3 called Heavy Rain, which was entirely comprised of these QuickTime events, which are basically minimal kind of interaction. Is it a game, or do they really want to make it a film?
An interactive movie?
I mean, I think the occasional QuickTime event is fine, but I think for me, when it becomes all about just occasionally hitting the right button at the right time, I don't know. I just think I'd rather be watching a movie rather than half playing a very long game. Like,
I can feel a separate podcast about this happening.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't get too bogged down in it. Yeah. So anyway, let's we just swing over to Nintendo, because Nintendo never go away. And in fact, in this generation, 7th generation, they had their most successful console, which was called the Nintendo Wii, and even like the uninitiated probably remember or even own a Wii and probably remember the adverts with people with the nunchucks and the Wiimotes
or
swinging them
white
around.
Trousers.
Yeah, and they'd be swinging them around and
Playing golf.
Playing sports games, and they had Wii Fit with a kind of balance board. It was innovative, to be honest. I mean, they had some rubbish.
It worked. It did work, which is I remember when I first got one. It was a weird one because as a sort of, apart from the Nintendo exclusives, whenever you bought anything that was released on the other consoles and ported across to it, it felt like the control system was sort of tacked on.
Yeah.
But when they were made with games, and they were innovative, the Nintendo games were made with that control scheme in mind.
It's just
it was perfect.
It was brilliant, and like, so you get like real key games like Wii Fit, and Super Mario Galaxy was just, I mean, it just couldn't work any other way. Like the control scheme in that. Super Mario Galaxy is, well, we've seen the Mario games, but this was a truly 3D game, and I don't just mean walking around a 3D landscape. I mean, you'd land on literally spherical planets, and you'd be running around these tiny little spherical planets, like moving around with you move around with one controller, and then with the other controller you'd be aiming at the screen, literally pointing this kind of like what is effectively the light gun at the screen, and you shoot the enemies with stars. So you're aiming with that, and you're moving him around and jumping Mario around and like shooting with stars. It's just amazing. It was big time, the Wii, because it really appealed to families, and that's what they really focused on with the marketing. Yeah. Like to say you can come together and like anyone can play it. So it was almost like the kind of antidote to what was happening in the kind of hardcore world of PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360. I mean, you look at like Modern Warfare and Halo, and The Last of Us, very, very serious. I mean, it was more about the kind of cinematic experience.
Yeah, when
Whereas
you
the,
look, I suppose if you look in the previous generations, the biggest games, the previous one generation with Tomb Raider, like a female
yeah,
protagonist, and now you're going towards heavy duty male.
very masculine, and
Yeah,
it's weird because, especially as you know, with each passing generation, more and more women get involved in gaming. In fact, now women outnumber men as far as gaming is concerned. So the follow-up to the Wii was the Wii U. We might as well mention it now.
yeah, yeah.
That was released in 2012, and I guess, I mean, great machine, brilliant console, but poor marketing, really poor marketing. Calling it a Wii U was a terrible idea in the
I,
first place.
it kind of was released, and I didn't realize that it was actually a console.
Yeah.
It just sort of
This was
came
the
out,
problem. This is the
and
problem. They messed up because I guess there've been so many peripherals, like different controllers and all sorts for the Nintendo Wii, which was great and people bought them. But the problem is that when the Wii U came out, people just thought it was another peripheral. They just thought it was another
really,
add-on for it. But so we won't focus on that too much because it's not. I mean, it's probably is going to be a footnote in gaming now, even though it's great. So around the time of yeah, the PlayStation 3 and the 360, handhelds were having something of a resurgence. I mean, from Nintendo's perspective, it never went away because they just dominated the whole time. They had the Game Boy, they had the Game Boy Color, they had the Game Boy Advance, but now they released the DS, which was, you may have seen, it's the handheld device which has got two screens. One of them is a touch screen. It came out at the same time as a Wii, and it really captured the kind of imagination of demographics which hadn't really been into gaming before, such as a female crowd. I mean, like on the DS, you had like brain training, so you had these kind of this actual kind of useful kind of game.
a lot of weird cooking apps as well.
Cooking Mama,
Cooking,
which was great.
which sounds like we're being sexist, but again, you see them all the time.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
but I don't think it's even to do with. I don't think it's just the idea of like association cooking with women. I think it's something different. It's not another shooter. It's not another.
It's just another branch out into sort of.
Yeah, it's something a little bit different. So the DS was there, and then it was followed up by the 3DS. They've done great, and also Sony released something called the PSP. What does that even stand for? PlayStation Portable?
PlayStation Portable.
All right, okay.
The main issue with them, again, with Nintendo when they released the DS, I don't know if there's 3DS. I don't know if there's a 2DS or whatever, but
There is a 2DS actually.
I know there's an XL and all that sort of stuff. But again, when you're looking for when you have a handheld, is mainly battery life. And of course, these have an internal battery you can charge. So you basically had the DS and the 3DS. They all had sort of an internal battery and the dual screens, and the graphics weren't pristine. They were good enough, but they used cartridges.
Yeah.
And I own a PSP, and what my issue with that was, of course, it used proprietary discs, so there were moving parts in it that just drained the battery, which was an odd backwards.
It was a strange one. Little discs inside a casing, wasn't it?
In a case, so they couldn't scratch too easily.
And they released films on them, didn't they?
Yeah, UMDs, I think Universal Media Device or something. But yeah, so the PSP, and again, I had one for a couple of years and it failed. The laser gave away in it, and then but PS Vita moved towards that sort of SD memory card.
Oh, right, yeah.
Which, of course, there's no moving parts. The battery lasts a lot longer. It's really crisp graphics. And the PS Vita is beautiful.
Nintendo does remain the kind of handheld king, really, because, I mean, it's dedicated games, handheld devices, i.e. the 3DS now, are still selling a load, and especially in Japan, it's just massive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Nintendo remains that kind of handheld king. And now Nintendo have actually signed a deal with a mobile games maker, so I think they're going to branch into the mobile sector, so that'll be interesting to see. So as I said, Japan loves handhelds. The West, as in US, in Europe, still loves consoles. So the latest generation is generation number 8. This is the generation we're living in now. Is dominated by the PlayStation 4.
We've said this before, but I think this will be the last generation of games being physical. I think it'll be fully digital
I agree.
as a marketing model because it'll
Absolutely,
be
definitely.
such a money saver.
Because why make a physical copy of a game with a box and the disc? When you boot up, when you turn on your PlayStation 3 or 4, you basically have to create a profile, so it's kind of locked to you there. So I guess that kind of works in itself, and people are used to that, and they're okay with having their own profile and having their own
It
games
is good
locked to the
because
profile.
if you say you've got a couple of siblings or parents that play in it as
Yeah,
well, it is nice to have your own profile, your own save games. It doesn't.
yeah.
It is.
Oh,
It is a good
definitely.
game.
I think it will be the future, and you're definitely right that the future is kind of digital, because I mean even now a lot of games. I mean on the PC, on the personal computer, on Windows, pretty much is entirely
Yeah.
it's entirely digital now. And so basically in this generation, the eighth generation, you've got PlayStation 4, you've got the Microsoft Xbox One,
Which
and you
is
got
how many copies it sold.
and you got Nintendo Wii U. I mean Xbox One's doing it all right, but PlayStation 4 is just totally dominating. It's kind of done and dusted now. Um, but yeah, definitely be the last disc-based generation. Nintendo have patented a design for their next console, which doesn't have an optical drive.
Really?
And what that means is that
Solid state, is it?
they're going to have a hard drive in it. Yeah, probably a solid state drive. But they'll have a hard drive inside the machine, but basically they won't have a disk drive, so you won't be able to read discs on it. It will just be download only, which is the future. So we're gonna have to accept
Yeah.
that, aren't we? I mean, it's the same as films, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
digital downloads are cheap to distribute, and you've got a kind of rise of episodic gaming now, haven't you? So yeah, it tends to be what you'll often get in games now is like chapters. So you'll buy the first chapter, and then the next chapter will come out later down the line.
It's good because I suppose if you say I'll use Halo, you really some Halo comes out, blows everyone's minds, and everyone hurtles out to buy it, and then you've got to wait 3 years for the next one. With episodic gaming, I suppose the only episodic game I hadn't played was The Walking Dead,
Mm.
and it was good. It was again just choice-based gameplay, quite cinematic, but overly so. If that was what
Yeah.
it was, so it worked. And of course, you finish one chapter, which would probably take like an hour and a half to finish, and then a month or two later, the next one will be out. So it does make sense in a
Yeah.
certain way.
So I'm going to list a few things which mean that the future of gaming looks kind of bleak. You've got the issue of Call of Duty type games, just franchise games coming out year after year, lack of innovation, that sort of thing. Online multiplayer at the expense of local multiplayer. By local, we mean people in the same room playing with each other.
Shouting at each other, drinking.
Endless sports game series, but I suppose people like that sort of thing. But again, it's the same sort of.
It's been happening since the 90s.
HD remakes can be a good thing, but they can be just a lazy thing as well.
They're making two examples. They're remaking Final Fantasy VII, or have remade it by now. I'm not sure. That is a good idea because the game I did like Final Fantasy VII, and it clearly was held back by technology at the time.
It was low definition.
Yeah, and it was on 4 discs, and it could do with like that story, that full voice acting, gameplay. If you're into that, wicked. They released Last of Us in 2012, and this year or last year they released a HD remake.
This is the issue.
I do not understand that.
It's same with the Uncharted series.
They haven't made Bushido Blade yet. I don't know what's going on.
Uncharted was a pretty cinematic and pretty impressive as it was on PlayStation 3. They've re-released it on PlayStation 4 in a crisper mode. It's like
Call me cynical.
Yeah.
I think they're reselling the same game to you.
Another bleak thing: it's spectacle over gameplay, and I see this a lot in a lot of games. It's the cinematic aspect. It's like come away from a game thinking, "Oh, that was awesome," but not come away from a game thinking that was fun to play.
Yeah.
There's quite a considerable difference between those things.
Not like you've achieved something, or
Yeah.
there was a certain part you really had to really apply yourself to get around.
Yeah.
Just sort of being a passive entity in the story that was unfolding around.
Like that was so technically impressive, and like the lights just wowed my eyes, and I pressed a button at the right time, and it made all the difference. And it's like, well, it's only skill in
you're
that.
describing Mario pressing buttons at the right time.
Well, I was thinking that, but it's like the fact. Well, it's a good example, like Mario. You think about like Super Mario Brothers on the NES. the amount of buttons you have to press in the right sequence at the right time, with the right kind of timing, and
Inertia.
and take into account the movement of the character and the positions of the enemies, is sophisticated. Compare that to
Hammering X to jump over a desk.
a button showing up on the screen with a timer underneath it and hitting it at the right time.
Okay. Yeah.
It's a different thing. And okay, so continuing with the bleak list, mobile gaming, again, people might argue it's awesome. I personally think it's a step backwards. Microtransactions, kind of tied in with the mobile gaming thing, really. Microtransactions are what, Brett? What are microtransactions?
Microtransactions are a way if you get a game for free, and then to get a new jacket is 15 quid. That's what microtransactions are.
Yeah, so it's like basically paying to open up
Content.
tiny bits of content, just iterative content.
And also with microtransactions, I abhor mobile gaming,
Yes.
but with them, what I find is there's a game at the moment called Battle Beach. There was a phase people were playing it a while ago, and with a lot of these mobile gaming, it's almost like you pay, the more you pay, the easier the game is.
Yeah, that's bad news, Brown, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, it's one thing to just buy a new pair of like shoes for £5 or something, because that's how you really want your character to look. But it's quite another to actually be able to buy success.
Buy your way through the game.
Isn't it?
Anyway, I finished that game. Yeah, it cost me 15 quid. Yeah.
I think that again, we've got another point because so many podcasts coming out of this. I would say, continuing with the bleak list, at the moment it feels like there's a kind of decline in innovation, especially when it comes to the hardware. Anyway, when you think about it just like this, right? The fact that the Wii U, this is current generation, the Wii U is very innovative, and it has like a gamepad with a separate screen, and you have a stylus, and you can you can do so many different things with this gamepad, and it still uses the old motion controls, all this kind of thing. Sells next to nothing. And then you've got the Xbox One, which is selling okay, pretty well, but only now that it's ditched its really innovative feature, which is Kinect, which was again motion sensor, and that was pretty cool because you have this kind of sensor and it literally picks up your movements around the room, and it's like voice sensitive, so you got all that. But no, people didn't want it. It was ditched. Now they're selling the console at a lower price without Kinect. It's a forgotten innovation. PlayStation 4 sells absolutely bucket loads, and what is it? It's just an extremely powerful PS3, and it's just got a very standard controller.
It's my point of view. I'm surprised you said that, but well, not surprised. It was right, but my view of it was going to be that when it came up to especially the launch of this generation with the PS4 and the Xbox One, they would say things like, "Oh yeah, on this you can." Basically, they were turning it into a PC. They were saying, "Oh, you can save your games library online, or you can download games and you can use it for this." And I thought all these things PCs have been doing for 10 years.
Yeah.
So why you're basically making me want to buy a PC, which is what I did.
Yeah. And then just have it, just plug it into your TV.
Yeah.
It's a slightly bigger unit, I suppose, but
yeah, it was. That was my view of the whole thing. Anyway, it pushed me into just buying a PC.
So now we move on to just to wrap it up. But the future looks bright list. This is the list I came up with. So the indie scene, which is such a big deal at the moment. We've mentioned it before, how it echoes the kind of public domain late 80s, early 90s.
I've played some absolutely fantastic indie games in the last 2 or 3 years.
And it's really good. The rise of the internet especially means that you can distribute these things so easily.
So cheaply as well.
And some of them are awesome. And you didn't really have that.
There was never a platform for it.
No, you couldn't really have that on consoles in former generations. Basically, you couldn't really have a very small developer making a game for a console, because of course it would be hugely expensive.
Yeah.
Because they had to create the kind of box, the cartridge or whatever.
Distribution.
Yeah.
Would never work.
And that means there is actually a shift towards focus on gameplay. You've got a lot of like platformers and stuff like that, and there's a real affection, a nostalgic affection for gameplay in a lot of these games. And that does affect the mainstream as well. So you get like games like Rayman, which was originally a 2D platformer, then
went 3D,
and now it's gone back to kind of 2D graphics, and it just looks beautiful, and it's like, and
Yeah.
it's so playable, and it's all about the gameplay.
And it's 4-player local co-op.
Hmm
The key to the door.
So you got this kind of, and then you got these innovation alongside HD remakes, and some HD remakes are worthwhile. You know, you look at things like Grim Fandango having an
Yeah.
HD remake, great
Please tell me
dark
it's
adventure
not got
game.
the original control scheme.
I don't think so.
My God.
A game which has also been remade as HD, Resident Evil, which is great, uh, and a very good HD remake. Again, what they've done is they've updated it with new controls as well, so you can choose to actually have it so you're not having these
Tank
weird
controls.
tank controls. By that we mean when you walk into, you're always pushing
Forwards.
forward to go forward, regardless of actually
The
which.
context of the camera.
Yeah, yeah, it's very strange. Other things to look forward to in the future: virtual reality, which is actually good, unlike virtual reality in the early mid 90s, which just was not. So you've got stuff like Oculus Rift, Project Morpheus, now it's called Sony VR. So you've got potential there. Kickstarter, crowdfunded games,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
always a good thing. So something like, what's it called? Ukulele.
Monster One in the Wizard of Booze. Are you thinking about?
Yes, I was thinking of that also. But basically, yeah, so you can, like, someone could come up with an idea, a small development team can come up with an idea and say to the fans, do you want this? If so, pay for it. They
Yeah.
do so, they make an awesome game,
Good.
which is fine. And again, you couldn't really have that before.
Thank you for that for Shadowrun as well.
Yeah. So what else we got? We got Feminist Frequency, which is actually a feminist kind of voice in the gaming world, which is great. And
Again, another podcast.
another podcast about all
Gamers
that.
can be tinkers. That
Oh,
would be
they-
called.
gamers and their views. And also going back to the digital thing, digital is the future, and it ultimately it probably is better for the reasons you mentioned before. It's kinder to the environment. It's easier to distribute. It's just
There's no reason to have, apart from people who want to have a collection, there's no reason other than nostalgia.
yeah,
No other, everything is digital. Books, films, TV shows. It's kind of sad in a way because we grew up with that, but if
Yeah.
you know, there's no reason beyond nostalgia. There's no plus points to having it.
no, and of course when it comes to digital, so you can get a lot of these games which are on cartridge and that anyway, emulated. I mean, we want to hold on to the classics for as long as we can, but they will die. Ultimately, the technology will die.
Yeah.
So I think digital is very important. It has an important role to play to actually keep hold of these classic games from all the eras we've talked about.
Yeah, stuff like even like stuff websites like GOG, which is goodoldgames.com, and they basically prime games from the 80s and 90s to work on modern PCs,
Yeah,
and they're timeless. Then you know they're not
Yeah.
gonna. I mean, I've got games on the Amiga from like 25 years ago that just don't work anymore, and it would just be lost if they hadn't had the foresight to do
so it
that.
really has a kind of a useful effect. So that's it. That's where we've come to. We brought gaming up to date,
Yeah,
and that's the end of our podcast. So I hope you've enjoyed it.
yeah, it's been fun.
It has been fun. There'll be more to come, I'm sure.